Okay, welcome everybody to the breakdown of the 2018 Health and Human Development exam. Okay, just to obviously go through what we're going to be looking at today, I'm going to be doing a little breakdown, going through the answers of the obviously this practice exam here. Okay, this has been a revised study guide to be relevant to this year. I'm also going to be going through things like the actual answers. I'm going to be deconstructing questions for you and also discussing how to achieve full marks and how to approach particular questions throughout the exam. Okay. What we would have noticed as well is I have got the revised guide from the BCAA here, which can actually give us a key understanding as to why answers and scores have been given for particular questions. This exam here is relevant to 13 questions as well for a total of 86 marks. And as I said, you can pause and stop this as you go along, whatever sees fit for yourself. Okay. So I'm just going to scroll on down and begin. Now, you would have noticed I have started to go and highlight and deconstruct questions, but I'm going to be doing this live as well, just so you guys can have an actual look into it also. Okay. But as you can see here on the right-hand side, we actually have the marking system by examiners from BCAA. Okay. And what they've done here is they've given a mark of, the percentage or the average grade that people would have gotten when attempting particular questions. So as you can see for question 1A, you got an average of 1.4. 52 people achieved 2 marks, 36 achieved 1 mark, and 12 achieved 0 mark from whoever this sort of got referenced from. Okay, I believe it was out of 100 people, so that's probably why. Okay, so again, as I said, I want to try obviously make sure that we can identify where we can get the full marks to this question. And again, examples of responses will be probably best for all of you as well to have a look at. Okay. So I guess we begin with the first question. So first question is asking us to outline how life expectancy differs from health adjusted life expectancy. Now, again, as I said here, average grade was 1.4. BCAA pretty much looked at this and said that basically that you need to look at the two definitions between it, okay? But the main thing about this is obviously having a contrasting statement, okay? So with this question, how to properly answer it is to have a definition for both life expectancy and also health adjusted life expectancy. But the key thing here is to have whereas, which is highlighted here, okay? And the main reason for that is because this question is asking you to outline life expectancy and its differentiation from health-adjusted life expectancy. So because it says differs, it needs to be a contrasting statement, okay? So for this, this example, the response here says that life expectancy measures quantity in years that a person is expected to live. And it says, whereas health-adjusted life expectancy measures the number of years a person is expected to live in good health. Okay, so to achieve full marks, again, key thing here, and what we've noticed from our previous SACs as well, is that if it's asking for a difference, okay, differs, compare and contrast, so forth, okay, you need to have that statement there as whereas in contrast to anything along those sort of lines like that, okay? So again, as you can see here, I've obviously done the breakdown already. Nice and easy one to start with. Question 1B. Explain how changes in policy and practice relating to old public health may have contributed to Australia's health status over time. So I basically tried to break this down to be as simple as possible. So that's why I looked at explain, changes in, and I did old public health, and they contributed to Australia's health status over time. Okay. Reason why I didn't highlight policy and practice is because you're looking at the changes in old public health initially, okay, and looking at its contribution to Australia's health status. So I think that when you're explaining it, you don't really need to worry about, focusing solely on policy and practice because you're already going to be explaining that anyway. Okay, so I'm trying to make sure that you can do the same thing when you approach the practice exam to take out keywords and to obviously make sure you're answering it. Okay. Now, as we can see here, the average mark here was 1.6. So many students actually found this question difficult. Only 17 people achieved full marks, so out of 4. Majority of it was between 2 and I'd say 1. Okay. No one really fell in between the bracket a lot. So there's only 12 people who achieved 3 marks. A big majority, however, achieved 0. Okay. So this is where it's obviously key to make sure that we're explaining this properly. Okay. So if you look here through some of the common areas, It included things like the selection of the example when representing new public health rather than old public health. So again, confusing the two. And failing to link the example provided to the contribution to Australia's health status. Okay, so again, for this, you'd need to have two examples, I'd say, of old public health and its contribution to health status in order to properly receive full marks for it. Okay, so again, if you look here at the following example, it says the old public health focused on the physical environment and its impact on mortality and morbidity. Government policies such as Public Health Act brought about funding for improvements in water and sanitation, nutrition, and housing conditions. This resulted in decreases in waterborne and infectious diseases such as diarrhea and cholera, and respiratory diseases such as influenza and pneumonia. So that's your first 2 marks here. Better nutrition led to immune systems, and it led to improved immune systems, enabling individuals to fight and recover from infectious diseases. As a result of decreasing the burden of disease in Australia, life expectancy increased and infant mortality rates decreased over time. So again, that's where you get the full marks. Okay. So again, you can have a Public Health Act in there, mainly if you wanted to contribute to it. Again, it's entirely up to you. But as far as making sure that you can distinguish how old public health contributed to Australia's health status, okay, and you have these examples here, okay, majority of the time you would get the marks for it. And I'd say that you need to obviously make sure that you're including things like improved water sanitation and so forth, okay. But again, if you want to know the policy in particular, then do so as well, okay. It's better for your reference also. Question 2. And again, obviously you can see here, I've only just started deconstructing this question here. What is meant by new public health? Okay, pretty simple here. What is meant new public health? Okay, or what is new public health is what I'm sort of going at here. So again, average mark was around 1. All right, so it wasn't particularly answered correctly. You know, a lot of people obviously struggled in this area. Okay, so if we look at the example of a high scoring response to get 2 marks, it says here that new public health relates to the social model of health and involves focusing on the broader social, economic, and environmental determinants that influence health rather than biological alone. It has a large focus on health promotion and the prevention of disease. So again, that's a high scoring response. Now, again, 2 marks, okay, you need to get. Initially, if you're talking about new public health, and again, it's your knowledge behind it, okay, majority of the time you're going to get 4 marks if you explain the key relevant points here. Okay, so if you refer to it being relating back to the social model of health, focusing on broader social, economic, and environmental determinants, you know, you got a whole variety of things here. Now, the one thing that you don't want to do in this question is you don't want to bring up old public health, because the questions are asking for the difference between the two. Okay, solely focus on what new public health is. Okay, just to go through that. Question 2B. Analyse one way in which new public health may have contributed to improvements in Australia's life expectancy over time. Okay, so again, analyse one way. You've got new public health, contributed is another one, and then you've got improvements in Australia's life expectancy over time. Now, again, it might seem that you're just highlighting the whole question. It's not. It's focusing on key points here. Okay, so the average mark out of 3 was close to 1. Okay, 58 people got 0. All right. So again, VCAA found that many students actually found the application of the example of new public health to improvements in health status difficult. Many select an example of a biomedical approach. So again, make sure you're focusing on new public health or the social model of health. Where students could identify one example, they were often able to explain it, but not discuss how it could have contributed to improvements in life expectancy over time. Students who chose other health campaigns, such as Sun Smart, Road Safety, or QUIT, were better able to answer the question. So, as we know, new public health focuses on the we've got non-communicable diseases we're focusing on now to give it a bit of a broader term. Okay, so we're looking at lifestyle choices in terms of how it's going to be affected. So again, this is where you've got to be focusing on the acronym areas as well. Okay, as well as when you're applying the actual question. Okay, and that will best serve you know, how you can actually approach this question overall. Okay, so the example of a high scoring response here says that new public health may have contributed to health status improvements in many ways. One being through health promotion campaigns. So again, this is where your key sort of look at is here, and then you can go from, you can pretty much go to a variety of avenues from this, okay? By promoting healthy behaviors and educating people on the effects of unhealthy behaviors such as smoking, people gain a greater level of health literacy, empowering them to take control and improve their own health. By knowing the adverse effects of smoking, people are less likely to smoke, reducing prevalence of cardiovascular disease and improving life expectancy. So that's where the 3 marks came from. Okay. So we looked here, the key things that they actually noted to get 3 marks. Okay. Basically, they found how it actually improves health status. Okay. Well, sorry, life expectancy. So we had a look here as to, empowering individuals to take control of their own health. Okay. Gaining understanding, health promotion campaigns. So of things like smoking, you could talk about Quit campaign, for instance, as well. Okay. So I've talked about health promotion campaigns such as Quit, endorsing and educating people on the effects of unhealthy behaviors of smoking. Bang, that's well marked there. Okay. Then we looked at obviously the improvement here as well. So people gaining a greater level of health literacy. Okay. Again, focusing on this area here about taking control of their own health. And then obviously the relay effect on them. So people being understanding the effects of smoking, they're less likely to smoke, then reducing the prevalence of cardiovascular disease and improving life expectancy. Okay. So the key thing in that 3rd mark to look at how it actually improves life expectancy over time, okay, comes from looking at cardiovascular disease and its prevalence. Okay. So that's where you get that 3rd mark there. Okay. Because you're focusing specifically then on the disease, okay, which then can allow you to obviously explain that it has affected life expectancy in an improved way, okay, without actually having that key area there, okay, you're not going to get that 3rd mark, all right, so it's important to make sure that you're using key terms within that, all right, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Question 3. And we'll look at question 3. So we've got a case study here. Sam is 25 years old and loves to play hockey. Sam suffered a broken leg and will be unable to play hockey for at least 2 months. Watching the team play has led to Sam feeling frustrated and upset. Referring to the information above, explain why the concept of health and well-being is considered to be dynamic. All right. So key thing here, looking at health and well-being firstly as well. We've got dynamic, okay, and we're looking to explain it. All right. So again, for 2 marks. Majority of people got 2 marks for this, okay? Average mark was 1.6, okay, out of the 100 people. So again, fairly easy concept to actually explain. So an example of a high scoring response, you could say something like, health and well-being is considered to be dynamic as it is always changing. 1 mark there. Sam's health and well-being, particularly physical, dropped because he broke his leg, but will rise again as he recovers, continually changing. Now, again, you could turn around and look at that as a mental aspect, okay? Saying that he is, his health and well-being, particularly mental, is currently down because he broke his leg and is unable to play hockey with his friends. But however, will obviously improve once he actually recovers from his broken leg. Therefore, will be able to be more participate with his team. Okay. Now you could even link that to social if you want to. You could link that to spiritual. It's entirely up to you. Okay. But in that aspect there, okay, physical was the easiest one because obviously with broken leg, but again, mental would be another easy one, or social would be an easy one to look at. Okay. Question 3B, explain spiritual dimension of health and well-being. So explain spiritual health and well-being is the easiest one here. For 2 marks, okay. So if we look at the exam guide, okay, 68 people received 2 marks for this, average is 1.7. So example of a high scoring response is spiritual health and well-being refers to the values, beliefs, and ideas that arise in the conscious of humans. Additionally, spiritual health relates to a person having a guiding sense of purpose and meaning within their lives. So again, you've got to have 2 relevant points to explain spiritual health and well-being. Kind of a no-brainer, but it is worth 2 marks. Okay, so because it is worth 2 marks, right, 2 examples need to be provided within your definition. Okay, so your first one, obviously values, beliefs, and so forth. Okay, get you that 1st mark. And then obviously looking at how it can provide a person to have a sense of purpose and meaning within their lives. Okay, even as simple as I just mentioned it then, will get you your 2nd mark. All right, nice and simple then. Question 3C, explain why Sam could still have optimal spiritual health and well-being. So explain, have optimal spiritual health and well-being. So I'm going to focus on that area there. All right. Again, average mark was 1.5. So this is a fairly easy section in the exam. All right. So one thing that BCAA decided to notice is that the students were able to use the information within the question to explain why optimal spiritual health and well-being could still be achieved. The most common error, however, was not applying this information in the response. Okay, so make sure obviously you're applying your information when you're responding to a question along these lines. All right. So, example of high scoring response to get 2 marks. Sam may still have optimal spiritual health and well-being because he's still able to and is watching the team play. Therefore, the fact that he's still part of the game as a spectator may mean that he's feeling a sense of belonging. There's your 1 mark there. All right. He will likely be cheering for his teammates and thus feeling a sense of purpose, meaning that his spiritual health and well-being is still optimal. And there's your 2nd mark. Okay. So again, there's a linking pattern within this response. Okay. So firstly, obviously, the person who wrote this question or this example here, okay, looked at focused solely on him being able to still participate as a spectator. Okay. So still being a part of the team. Therefore, he's going to actually have that sense of belonging within the team because even though he is injured, he's still part of that cultural group. Okay, he's still part of that team aspect. All right, so that's where you get your 1 mark there. All right. Again, the second part from this answer, okay, still having a sense of purpose because he's cheering for his teammates, meaning that he has an optimal spiritual health and well-being. Again, that's where the 2nd mark comes from. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, you could actually flip this and use it as the first one for 3A. Okay. For 3A. Okay. So again, it's entirely on you if you wanted to use that as an example. All right. But if we stick with how this could be a positive aspect, all right, like I said, it'd be a little bit difficult to do it for 3A, but again, it's your choice. All right. Just give you another example there. Move on to question 4. So question 4. Consider the following 3 sources relating to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. All right, so this was out of 8 marks in total. Okay, so there's a couple of sources here. Okay, and as you can see, the actual question here says, using the information provided, analyze the NDIS contribution to optimal health and well-being as a resource both individually and nationally. All right, so using the information, this key thing here first, analyze the NDIS. So we'll go contribution to optimal health and well-being, and then we'll do it both individually and nationally. Okay, so there's key things here that you need to make sure you're focusing on. All right. Again, you've got the case study here. So Anna's son, Daniel, is in primary school and has been diagnosed with autism. This diagnosis means he's eligible for assistance through the NDIS. James and the NDIS local area coordinator met with Anna to discuss Daniel's needs and goals and developed an individual NDIS plan for Daniel. James was able to connect with Anna with workshops for parents designed to develop their knowledge of autism and ways to help their children build their skills and independence. Part of the plan included funding for a backyard playground to help Daniel participate in activities to improve his imagination. Right, so again, at 8 marks, no one actually received the full 8 marks for this question. All right, as you can see here, kind of floated between it. One person out of the 100 actually scored 7. The majority of people was in this bracket here between 1 and about 4. Okay, where your highest numbers. So how students were actually marked were based on a variety of things. Okay, they were firstly marked on how the response was structured. Second was how the stimulus has been understood and connected and synthesized. The third point was how the stimulus material has been able to support the analysis of the NDIS program and how it can promote health and well-being. And the fourth part here was a discussion of how health and well-being is a resource individually and nationally. All right. So if we look here, okay, we look at common areas where that information provided about the NDIS in general, but made no mention of or connected with the stimulus material, or responses that focused on one piece of stimulus material at the expense of all others. So again, you've got the stimulus material here. Okay, this is what it's referring to. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at how this stimulus here is able to be either contribute to optimal health and well-being. Okay, so that's when it comes with the using the information section here. Okay. And then you can focus that obviously with how it so you're focusing with the source or the stimulus here to how it can contribute to optimal health and well-being, okay, through your own analysis. So that's that first part there, okay, that I'm trying to explain. The second area was that some students focus on the discussion almost entirely on the contribution of NDIS to optimal health and well-being as a resource individually without resource to actually being nationally, okay? So again, you could even look at this as to an example we've used before in previous SACs, okay? We looked at how NDIS can be affecting social and mental health and well-being, okay? And you could use that as well, okay? In terms of that, you could also focus on the community aspect as well spiritually, okay? Another area here was that responses that did not score well tended to restate the stimulus material rather than analyze it, okay? Make broad statements about health and well-being with limited reference to the NDIS and only make general statements about optimal health and well-being as a resource, often focus only at individual levels, okay? So the main thing here that people were sort of lacking was how it can obviously impact nationally, okay? So this is an example of a response. It's fairly long, okay, but I'm going to try simplify as much as I can as well. So the NDIS is an initiative by the Commonwealth Government to provide support for Australians with a disability, their families and carers. According to the information provided, the most common forms of disability that are funded under the scheme are autism and intellectual disabilities. The NDIS aims to promote optimal health and well-being, which is a resource individually and nationally. The scheme has managed to achieve this for many participants, but not all. School to 14-year-old participants registered the lowest level of satisfaction, with less than 50% of participants indicating the NDIS was not helping them with their daily living, relationships, or social community and civic participation. However, the highest level of satisfaction was indicated in the 0 to before school group, followed in general by those aged 25 years and over. The contribution of the NDIS to promote optimal health and well-being as a resource individually is also evident in the information relating to Anna and Daniel. As a parent with a child suffering from autism, the NDIS provided Anna with an opportunity to connect with workshops designed for parents to develop their knowledge of autism and their ways to best support their child. This could contribute to improved emotional health and well-being for Anna at an individual level. Anna may increase her understanding of autism and be equipped with skills to help Daniel. This could reduce Anna's level of stress and anxiety that can often stem from caring for a child with a disability, promoting optimal health and well-being. Funding to provide a backyard playground for Daniel could also improve his physical and mental health and well-being, as it will allow him to participate in activities to improve his imagination. So there's 2 marks here, just simply based off looking at how it can improve, how can it try achieve optimal health and well-being at an individual level. Okay. That's the first thing there, right? 1 mark would obviously come here from actually explaining the NDIS, all right? And again, you probably would receive a mark here by using the information provided, okay? So within here, you probably find 2 marks, okay? There'll be 2 marks here also, okay? Moving on. Individually, optimal health and well-being provides a greater choice for people. The NDIS has been successful in increasing choice and control for over 60% of participants aged 15 to 24 and over 25 years. Optimal health and well-being also means that people can work and improve their lives. However, only 20% of participants indicated that NDIS has helped them with work. Optimal health and well-being reduces the risk of illness and premature death, which increases the ability of individuals to live free from pain and spend more time going to school or work, spending time with family and friends, running a household and living independently. This has been achieved for many participants receiving the NDIS, with more than half of the participants indicating that the NDIS has helped them with their daily living, relationships and social community and civic participation. By providing support for daily living, the NDIS is contributing to optimal health and emotional health well-being. Support with relationships helps develop the optimal social health and well-being, and supporting social community and civic participation has the potential to promote optimal social, mental, and spiritual health and well-being. Here is 2 marks here. You're looking specifically in this section here at how it can promote nationally, okay? Now, you might be wondering how, okay? Key things here that actually been focusing on, okay? If we're having a look here, okay, firstly, it looks at how optimal health and well-being can reduce the risk of illness and premature death, which allows the ability of individuals to live free from pain and spend more time going to work or school, spending time with families, running a household, living independently. So there's one part there, how it looks at nationally. Okay. The second part here that how it looks at improving nationally as well, okay, is in the second section. Okay. So it says here that, again, daily living, relationships, social, and so forth. Okay. Providing support for daily living, the NDIS contributing to optimal mental and emotional health and well-being, support with relationships, help develop optimal social and health and well-being, and supporting social, community, and civic participation has the potential to promote optimal social, mental, and spiritual health and well-being. So that's where it comes as the 5 and 6 mark, okay, to receiving in this question here, okay, in terms of looking at it nationally. All right. A lot of analytics here with the data, okay, so again, mark here for the data, okay, data here as well, another mark, all right. So far we have, and I'm going to rephrase it, okay, we have 1 mark here, let's say, we have 2 or 3 marks here, mark 4, mark 5 and 6, okay. Last section, populations with higher levels of optimal health and well-being experience economic benefits such as higher average incomes and less absenteeism from work. Social benefits include improved life expectancy and less strain on the health system. Therefore, it is evident that the NDIS has made a contribution to achieving optimal health and well-being, which is resourced individual and nationally. So again, summarize it up, get that final mark. All right. So we've got 1 mark at the start, another mark here for the data, 2 marks. So let's say that's 3 and 4. Okay, let's rephrase it again. 5 with the data, 6 and 7, and then 8. Summarizes it up. Okay. Again, fairly big chunk of thing that data that you need to take in. Okay, because in consideration with this question here. Okay, and again, it's worth 8 marks, so it's going to be pretty long in terms of, you know, where you would be spending your time on it. Okay. Realistically, in an exam, if I saw this question here and it wasn't broken down, it was one whole 8 mark question, I'd leave it towards the end. Okay. And the reason for doing so is because you can focus solely on your time towards the end of it when you have time remaining. Okay. Especially if you have about, I'd say maybe half an hour to go in the exam. Okay. Again, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and spend half an hour or so on one question, okay, we'll say half an hour max, on one question without actually focusing on where other areas you need to attack this sort of exam, all right, which I'm going to go through that a little bit later, okay, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention a bit earlier on, okay. So again, in particular with this question, just to summarize that, okay, you're trying to consider 3 sources of data at one time, okay. So that's where you're probably looking at, you know, how does this information make sense? How's the marks actually coming from? Okay. Well, again, looking at these two looking at the first source, okay, you can see here why the first mark would have been given, okay, because we're looking at obviously the most common source of disabilities, okay. Looking at the second mark, again, because we're looking at, again, types of percentage of data being used, okay. So again, data is being used in this section here, the question, the response, okay. And then we're looking at data being used in this section here, okay, at an individual level, okay. So again, what you have here is you have 0 to before school, school to 12, school to 14 years, 15 to 24 years, and 25 years and older, okay. Again, it might make a bit more sense when you have maybe in color and presented in front of you in a bit larger screen, okay. I'll zoom in a little bit here, maybe that will help. Okay, so as you can see here, that's all the information that we have in front of us. Okay, so that's where 2 marks would have come from using the data overall. Okay, then majority of the rest of the actual response was stemmed from the actual case study itself, which was provided here. Okay, so again, making sure obviously you're focusing and trying to ensure that you can adequately respond to the question using 3 sources. Okay, but again, we'll go into that again a little bit later. Okay. Question 5. So again, out of 3 marks, average mark for this was 1.6. As you can see, throughout it all, it pretty much fluctuated between a lot. Okay, so as you can see here, 24 people got 0, 24 got 1, 27 got 2, and 25 got 3. Okay, so the question here says, according to the 2012-2013 Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Survey, Obesity rates for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander males and females were significantly higher than comparable rates for non-Indigenous people in almost every age group. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander rates for heart disease were significantly higher than the comparable rates for non-Indigenous people in all age groups from 15 to 54 years. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander rates for diabetes high sugar levels were between 3 and 5 times higher as the comparable rates for non-Indigenous people in all age groups from 25 years and over. So, question 5A. Select one socio-cultural factor and explain how this factor could account for the differences in Indigenous and non-Indigenous health status identified in the health survey. So again, I'm going to look at Indigenous and non-Indigenous health status. I'm going to look at differences. Okay. You've got one social cultural factor, and then you're going to explain. All right. You need to explain this factor. Okay. And I don't think I need to highlight factor because you need to obviously pretty much a no-brainer. So basically then you have one socio-cultural factor explaining the difference in Indigenous and non-Indigenous health status identified in the survey. Okay. So again, we'll look here. Many students identified a relevant socio-cultural factor, but struggled to explain how the factor selected could account for the differences in Indigenous and non-Indigenous health status. Specific links to results from health survey were necessary, and many responses indicated the need for students to read the question carefully. So, some examples of high possible responses. So, we'll look here we'll look at income. We'll look at that firstly. All right. I think we only need to focus on one. So, Indigenous Australians are more likely to be employed in low-skilled jobs, resulting in low incomes compared to non-Indigenous Australians. This could lead to poor food security, resulting in the consumption of cheaper foods that are more likely to be high in fat, salt, and sugar, which is a risk factor for overweight, obesity, and cardiovascular diseases, all of which are common in Indigenous Australians compared with non-Indigenous Australians. So, you've got 1 mark for obviously your factor, okay? You've got your second mark here, okay, which came from this area here, okay? Obviously with low-skilled jobs, resulting in lower incomes compared to non-Indigenous Australians, okay? Now, to get that final mark, there needs to be a linking statement, okay? So, how can having a lower income affect one particular area that you're going to focus on, all right? So this focus here was obviously on overweight and obesity rates, okay? So the focus then stemmed onto food security, which is quite easy to obviously link to, okay? But then not only was it a link to food security, it was how food security can be a factor to this area. Now, if you don't actually link that, okay, it kind of makes your second and third mark become non-existent, okay? Because what this individual has done here with this response, in this example here, okay, is they've used food security to look at how, having a high income or having a low income can impact choices of food, okay? So consumption of cheaper foods, most likely to be high in fat, salt, and sugar, then therefore becoming a risk factor for overweight, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. And then obviously the final wrapping point there was that it was common in Indigenous Australians compared to non-Indigenous Australians, okay? So again, that's key. The main thing you need to make sure when you're answering this question, okay, is with your explanation, you're focusing on how is the difference between the two, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, okay? So that's where you can also that's where the 3 marks laid. All right. Again, you've got other things here: socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, or food security itself. Okay. Again, if you didn't mention food security, but you mentioned about having poor choices in diet. Okay. If you looked at socioeconomic status, you focus on education. Okay. You can look at health literacy then. Okay. Again, you could turn around and look at unemployment. Okay, and look at again. A variety of different responses there. So again, you can look at food security, looking at cheaper sources of food to consume. Okay, this one here is with the smoking and alcohol, which increases stress rates. It's a whole variety of things there you can look at. Okay, there's a whole different avenue. All right, just to make sure you're aware. Question 5B. Referring to the information from the health survey above, explain how the Australian dietary guidelines could assist in improving Indigenous health status. Explain Australian dietary guidelines assist, sorry for those who have OCD, improving Indigenous health status. Okay. Now, obviously, you're going to be referring to the survey above. No brainer there. All right. But they're the key things here. All right. So for 4 marks, again, average mark was 1.8. So you a lot of people fail between that 1 to 3 sort of mark there. Okay. I'd say actually, 0 to 2. All right. Was the main thing here. Very rarely do people get 3 or 4. So again, students need to use the information from the survey, link this to a relevant dietary guideline, and then discuss how the dietary guideline selected could assist in improving Indigenous health. Okay, so there's your information you need to use. All right, use the information from the survey is your first part. Link to the relative dietary guideline, second part. Discuss how the dietary guideline selected could assist in improving Indigenous health, Indigenous health, 3 and 4. Okay. Obviously making 2 links there. All right. So we'll look at the second mark here because this will probably be a common one used, okay, and an easy one to use, especially in the exam. All right. So Australian Dietary Guideline 2 advises people to enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods from the 5 food groups every day and drink plenty of water. An emphasis is placed on nutrient-dense foods that are high in fiber and promote satiety. I don't know how to say that word, I apologize. Following this guideline could help reduce the incidence of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes, high sugar levels among Indigenous people. Okay, so there's my mark here. Okay, looking at the Australian Dietary Guideline. Second mark here. Okay, nutrient-dense food, high in fiber, satiety. And then looking at how it can reduce the incidence of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes among Indigenous people. Okay, 3 and 4. Okay, nice and simple. Again, you can look at focus on the first Australian Dietary Guideline. Okay, you could say that Indigenous Australians have higher rates of obesity compared to non-Indigenous Australians in almost every age group. That's referring to the data and the actual information provided. I should say. Australian Dietary Guideline 1 states to achieve and maintain a healthy weight, be physically active and choose amounts of nutritious food and drinks to meet your energy needs. Second mark, by being physically active, consuming nutritious food and drinks, and eating according to energy needs, rates of obesity in Indigenous population could decrease, 3 and 4. Okay, so again, that linking statement. How can it improve health status? All right, there's your 2 marks. All right, seems simple, but it actually works. Okay, question 6A. So describe how the Koori Community Kitchen program could improve social and emotional health and wellbeing for 4 marks. Okay, so I've got describe. We're going to look at the Koori Community Kitchen program, improve social and emotional health and wellbeing. So again, what would you need to do? Simple thing here, okay, to achieve 4 marks for this question, okay, would be to explain how, firstly, it can improve social, and then secondly, how it can improve emotional. Okay, so if we look at that, average mark was 2.5. The Koori Community Kitchen is open for community members to meet and have a chat with other members, assisting them in forming meaningful relationships, satisfying relationships, and promoting social health and wellbeing. Bang, 2 marks there. By meeting and talking to others, individuals can discuss issues or concerns they may have, helping them to manage emotions and promote emotional health and well-being. Bang, another 2 marks. All right. So you can see here, okay, how it links. All right. To get your 4 marks. All right. Fairly simple. All right. Because it's not asking you to look at a difference between the 2. Okay, it's asking you to look at how it can improve social and emotional health and well-being. You can make this as a statement for both, okay? So again, using the information, that's how you can utilize it, all right? Question 6B. Identify and describe 2 action areas of the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion that are reflected in the Koori Community Kitchen program and explain how they are evident. Identify and describe. okay, your first sim. You're identifying one action area, that's your first part, and then you're describing it. Same thing for the second area. All right. Two action areas as well. Endurable charter, reflected in the Kuru Community Kitchen program. Explain how it's evident. Okay. So that'd be a key thing there. All right. Obviously, you doesn't say it is, but keep it nice and simple. Okay. So for 6 marks. Okay. So 3 marks each. All right. Many students were able to identify the action areas of the Ottawa Charter and apply their understanding of the example to the example provided. However, a common error was students not providing a description of the action area in addition to its application. Students are reminded to read questions carefully and answer what is being asked. As you can see here, average mark was 2.8. And the majority of people fell between that 3 and 4 sort of barrier here, okay, without achieving the full 6 marks, right? So a couple of things here, obviously. The first thing is it has to be relevant to actually the program itself, okay? If it's not relevant to the program, then you're not going to get the mark for it, okay? But if we're looking at particular things here, all right, 2 things that I would say that be nice and easily reflected would be something like create supportive environments, okay? Could you look at social health and well-being, okay? And how it looks at that, okay? You could look at strength and community action is another key one to use, or develop personal skills, okay? Would be an easy one to do. So I'd say them two there, create a supportive environment and develop personal skills would be the 2 easiest to identify in this actual program, okay? So you get 1 mark for your identification, okay? You need 2 marks to get 3, sorry. The next 2 marks come from your description and obviously explaining how it's evident, okay? So create supportive environments. A supportive environment provides opportunities for individuals to build links in a socially and culturally sensitive manner that promotes positive health and well-being. Second mark is here. So first mark here, okay? Second mark comes here. The program coordinated by Peninsula Health provides a space to meet and have a chat with other community members in a culturally friendly environment and therefore reflects a supportive environment. Second mark. That's for 3. For develop personal skills, 1 mark. Building of life skills and information through health promotion and education is key focus in this action area. Developing knowledge and skills allows people to make informed choices impacting their health and well-being. So again, I'd say this whole statement would be that second mark, okay, basically because it's looking at education, okay, and then it goes on from looking at developing knowledge and skills to make informed choices, okay? And the key thing there that links it is that how it can impact the health and well-being. All right. So that's where the second mark comes from. All right. You can summarize that as much as you want. Okay. But again, it's entirely up to you. This program provides opportunities for members of the Kuru community to build their cooking skills and is therefore developing personal skills. So again, the second link there obviously goes back to it. All right. For 3. So that's how you would get 6 marks. All right. Okay. Question 7. So going back on this again, out of 2 marks. Okay. The following table shows indicators of health status for a range of countries. And you have Australia, South Sudan, Greece, France, and Nigeria. Okay. The question's asking you to identify a low-income country from the table above. Okay. Use data from the table, justify your response. Okay. For 2 marks. So a low-income country is Nigeria that you could use. Okay. And then your justification follows that. A lot of people got 2 marks, so it was a fairly easy question to obviously answer, okay? So again, Nigeria has a low human development index of 0.353 using this column here, okay? Suggesting low levels of knowledge, income or GNI, and likelihood of long and healthy life. Additionally, mean years of schooling is only 1.7 years, which is typical of a low-income country, and disease rates are at a high at 49.1 chronic respiratory death per 100,000 rates compared to 27.8 in Australia. So again, as you can see here, okay, the second part there to obviously with the justification of the response, okay, is a comparison to a high-income country, okay. Now, doesn't necessarily ask you to do a comparison, okay. Therefore, even if you provided the first lot of information, okay, you would get the second mark. But again, I would try to make sure that I give every means possible to allow, the examiner or the marker to make sure that they have no chance but to give you 2 marks. So again, I'd throw in a little comparison, to a high income country just to be safe. Okay, even if you looked at the GNI and compared that to Australia, okay, just as different lots of data, and then went on to explain again how Nigeria is a low income country, perfectly fine as well. Okay, so 7B, we're looking at number 1 for that. Describe the Human Development Index. Describe Human Development, or HDI. Okay, so average mark was around 1. Okay, so the main thing here that people found, that the examiners found, that students were unable to provide a description of the Human Development Index. Common errors related to lack of accurate wording when referring to dimensions and or indicators. So an example of a high scoring response is that HDI is a tool developed by the United Nations to rank countries based on their social and economic development. It has 3 dimensions: a long and healthy life, knowledge and decent standard of living, and 4 indicators. So again, that is a fairly well-structured response, okay, for 2 marks, okay? Fairly easy as well. So again, maintaining a glossary is key, okay? So that's where you get 2 marks in. Second part of question B. Outline one advantage and one limitation of HDI. So the advantage, okay, average mark was 1 in this question here, okay. Many people struggle to do both, which is why the average mark was 1. So an advantage is that it's a comprehensive measure of human development compared to other indicators such as GNI. Limitation, it's based on averages, so HDI does not provide indication of inequalities that exist between countries. Nice, easy response there. You could also state that again, obviously data can be missing and so forth, things that we've already used before, okay? You've answered this question before in the previous SAC, so that therefore should be easy to respond, okay? Question C. Identify one feature of Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health and well-being, that is relevant to addressing the health issues known in the table on page 10. So again, you're referring back to the table, okay, to answer this question, all right? So identifying one feature, we've got SDG 3, okay, relevant to addressing health issues in the table, okay, for 1 mark. So average, look, it was fairly more 0 compared to 1, okay, average was 0.5, all right? So you could say ensure health, universal health coverage, ensure access to reproductive health services, introduce the Human Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, a whole variety of things here, okay, that you could use. We've already covered this, so it should be easy to identify. C, part 2. Explain how actions taken to achieve SDG 4 could assist in achieving SDG 3. Explain how achieving SDG 4 could assist in achieving SDG 3. Nice and easy. 3 marks, okay? So for this question here, average is 1.1. Many people fell between 0 and 1 mark here, as you can see, okay? Main things here that examiners found. Many students struggled to provide the necessary understanding to be awarded full marks. They needed to connect at least one component of SDG 4 to a specific feature of SDG 3. A common area was discussing education as a broad concept rather than a specific component. So SDG 4, quality education, addresses the importance of girls and boys around the world having equal access to high quality education from primary to tertiary levels of education to attain the vocational skills needed for meaningful employment. When girls and boys around the world have access to high quality education, they are less likely to have higher levels of health literacy. They are likely to have higher levels of health literacy and be aware of the importance of safe sexual practices, which can reduce the risk of these children contracting STDs such as HIV, reducing the spread of HIV, AIDS, and assisting with the achievement of the key feature and epidemics of communicable diseases in SDG 3. Okay, so key things here, obviously. We've got your first point here about what impact quality education can have on boys and girls. Okay. We then link that to making sure that they can have high levels of health literacy and understanding the importance of safe sex practices, and includes an example of HIV. Okay, and then we've linked it then to how it can impact SDG 3 by saying that the reducing of the spread of HIV/AIDS can assist in achieving key feature in epidemics of communicable diseases. Okay, that thing there, that last point there, sorry, I should say. Again, when you're actually in your explanation, because I know that some people will have, we're wondering, do we actually put SDG 4 in it? Yes. Do I actually have to write Sustainable Development Goal 4? Well, not in this case, yeah, no, because it's giving you the acronym, and therefore you don't have to explain, you don't have to write it in full. Okay, so I'd write the acronym. Plus, the amount of space that you have there suggests that you probably wouldn't be able to write the full word in there without taking a majority of space. Okay, so that's how I'd approach that question here. Question 8. So again, for 6 marks. Again, you've got a case study here. All right, and the average mark for this, for question 8A, which isn't there for whatever reason, okay, it's not there, but either way, okay, we'll move on to question 8B. All right, so 8B, average mark was 0.9. Okay, as you can see here, many people fell between the marks of 0 to 1. Okay, 40 achieving 0. Okay, so the question's asking you to explain how this program promotes human development. All right, so I'll just do it like that. Okay, for 2 marks. So students had an understanding of human development. They could provide an example of how the program could promote. Okay, so the key thing obviously is having an understanding of human development. So I'll go with the second point here. With improved access to vegetables and fruits, people are more likely to experience improved health and well-being and better immunity to disease. When people are healthy, they can attend school or work and are more likely to become involved in political and community life. Good health and well-being in an educated community allows people to make decisions that meet their needs and empowers them to lead productive and creative lives, improving health, human development. So as you can see here, all right, the first mark obviously stems from the first area of the question, okay, which looks at obviously access to fruits and vegetables, okay, and building the immunity to diseases, okay, and then obviously the impact that might have. So, being able to provide more for the community, okay, be involved, more likely to attend school or work, and have, more choice in their community and political life, okay. And then the second mark came from how good health and well-being in an educated community allows for people to make informed decisions that can empower them to lead productive and creative lives, and therefore impact or improve human development, for the second mark. Okay. Question 8C. Now, I believe the reason why 8A was missing is because it's been revised, so that's why. Okay. So for 8C, okay, out of 4 marks, it's asking you to discuss the relationship between this program, so again, and achieving SDG 3. Okay, average mark for this question was 1.5. Okay, so the one thing that, 1.2, looked the wrong area. So the one thing that VCAA found was that many students found the actual question challenging because they were discussing how the program would promote health and well-being in general, but were unable to link the program to any specific features of SDG 3. Common error was the assumption that the program was providing safe water for drinking rather than provision of water for agriculture. Okay, so again, obviously you need to read through this case study to make sure you're aware of that as well. Okay. I just wanted to save time and not read through it. So if you look at an example of possible response, okay, you could say something like, this program ensures families in Afghanistan have water to grow their crops. This has contributed to the growing of vegetables and fruit, which has provided families in the community with food to eat. With access to fruit and vegetables, neonatal and under 5 mortality rates may be reduced. Mothers will be better nourished during pregnancy, which provide newborns with a better start to life and greater immunity to diseases. This could reduce maternal mortality with adequate nutrition, Children will also have better immune systems and adequate growth, which will help reduce the rates of disease and illness and under 5 mortality rates. So what you can see here, which is common, okay, is looking at the provision of having access to food, nutritious foods, and its impact on under 5 mortality rates and maternal mortality rates. Okay, so it's kind of what's actually happened here within this question, okay, because it's asking to discuss the relationship, okay, is basically you're trying to go back and forth, okay. So looking at how it can impact SDG 3 and achieving SDG 3, and how then SDG 3 can improve then obviously, obviously with the program, okay, itself. All right. So what this actual answer has done here, okay, is it's looked at access to fruit and vegetables, okay, impacting neonatal and under 5 mortality rates then being reduced, okay. And the reason being is because obviously, um, you know, promotion of agriculture and so forth, okay. What it's then done is looked at how mothers can be better nourished during pregnancy, which is actually an achievement of SDG 3, okay. So the first part here is looked at agriculture, crops being grown, and how it can impact neonatal under 5 mortality rates. The second part is started the focus on looking at mothers being nourished during pregnancy, okay, and then building immunity to diseases for their youngborns, okay. So again, what they've then done is they've looked at how it can reduce maternal mortality, okay. It also looks at how it can actually reduce the rates of disease and illness, and then impact under 5 mortality rates. So that's the key thing in terms of relationship, okay? You're trying to explain how it can go back and forth the same way, okay? Same thing like an interrelationship in that same question, okay? Focus on that, again, same sort of manner. You're looking at how the program can promote the achievement of SDG 3, looking at how SDG 3 is reflected to then be looking at how the program is suited towards it, okay? To make it in a simpler context, okay? So you're going back and forth between the two to achieve the full marks. If you say they're 2 different points, okay, but didn't actually explain the relationship, you're not going to get the mark for it, okay? So the key thing here is obviously that keyword, relationship, okay? How it goes both ways is what you need to make sure you're explaining, all right? Question 9, nice and simple here. Explain the term discrimination. I'm going to say discrimination here for 2 marks. Right, average mark was 1.5. Okay, could say something like discrimination is unjust treatment and violation of rights of an individual due to factors such as their age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. Okay, again, example provided, definition provided at the start to get 2 marks. Okay, if you leave it at second part, looking at an example, so such as is a key thing there to use. Okay, especially if the question's worth 2 marks, always put such as. Okay, if it's asking to explain the term, all right, or give a definition of, or whatever it might be. Give an example, okay? Only doing yourself a favor with that, okay? Don't just rest solely on having one example, okay, or have a definition there, thinking you're gonna get 2 marks, you're not, okay? Question 9b, explain how discrimination might contribute to differences in health status and burden of disease, okay? So explaining how discrimination contribute differences in health status and BOD, burden of disease, okay, for 2 marks. Average mark for this question here was 1.2, okay, fairly even where people, fell in between the marks of 1 to 2, okay, as you can see, it was in the high 30s, so again, fairly well answered question, all right. The main thing here, obviously, is that there was the common error was not linking the example to the impact on health status or burden of disease. Okay, so they can only do it one or the other. Okay, so the example of a possible response looks at discrimination often results in a social exclusion, reducing access to education and employment, and increases rates of poverty. Poverty reduces access to food, water, sanitation, healthcare, which can lead to higher rates of maternal under 5 mortality rates. So again, we're looking at health status there, okay, and burden of disease. All right, within it all. Okay, if you look over, we've got 10A for 9 marks. Okay, so again, the case study is in 2014, the World Health Organization established a commission on ending childhood obesity. The commission was established to review, build upon, and address gaps in existing guidelines and strategies. It developed a set of recommendations to successfully tackle childhood and adolescent obesity in different contexts around the world. So question 10A looks at outlining how the work of the WHO, okay, outline how WHO, okay, reflected in the information above contributes to good health and well-being. So you're going to look at good health and well-being. All right. So you could say something along the lines of, all right, again, average mark for this was 0.7. So not really well answered this question, okay? But possible answer might be something like the work of the World Health Organization reflected in information is to develop policies to assist countries to take action, to promote health and well-being. This will support all countries in implementing a framework for action to successfully reduce the level of childhood and adolescent obesity. Nice and simple response there, okay, to get 2 marks there. All right. 10B, identify who priority reflected in the information above. Okay, nice and simple. That question there. Many people weren't able to actually answer it though. Okay, so one thing there you could state is non-communicable diseases and health-related SDGs. All right, for 1 mark. So if we look at question 10C, it states here, why is childhood obesity now a global issue affecting high income, middle income, and low income countries? All right. So key thing here for 6 marks, and it's pretty identifiable off the bat. Okay. So again, childhood obesity, got high income. Okay. So we'll put affecting here as well. All that. Okay. Now, and look at globally. Okay. Now the main thing here to achieve 6 marks is obviously explain the goal, like an impact, okay, and relating it back to all class of income countries, okay. Otherwise, without doing so, okay, you're going to miss the mark and not actually receive the mark for it, okay. So again, for 6 marks, average is 1.7, okay. So again, it depended on, you know, going through however you sort of responded with it, but you could sort of see here that only 1 person achieved 6, okay, and many people fell between 0 and about 3, I'd say, okay. So many students were unable to show the relationship between the global marketing and distribution of processed foods in high income, middle, and low income countries to obesity. Common areas were overlooking the need to discuss obesity as an issue in high income, middle, and low income countries, and assuming that processed foods options are cheaper for families in low-income countries. All right, main thing here. So again, how are you explaining it? Okay, is looking at how childhood obesity can affect high-income, low-income, middle-income families. Okay, and you're going to look at it in a global aspect. Okay, global marketing. Okay, easy thing to obviously look at. Promotion. Okay, of these fast food restaurants. Okay. You can focus then on education when you're looking at low income countries, okay? Might look at accessibility, okay? Why it's targeting low income countries or middle income countries and so forth, okay? So, an example of a possible response. Child and adolescent obesity has traditionally only been an issue for high income countries and rates have continued to increase over the last 20 years. Okay, with that first statement there, okay, I don't think, you know, you're going to make mention of the 20 years and then that's going to be the be all end all, okay? There's no data to represent that, okay? If you mention that it's only been an issue for high income countries, okay, and there's continued to increase, that's fine, okay? Fast food outlets have become more common and advertising continues to target children. However, the rates of childhood obesity in middle income countries are now overtaking the rates in high income countries. Obesity rates are also increasing in low income countries. This has largely occurred as a result of global distribution and marketing. Large multinational fast food companies have aggressively marketed foods high in carbohydrates and fats in middle and low income countries, where there is less understanding of the health and well-being effects of this food and less money for health promotion and prevention services. Along with this has been the migration of families from rural areas to larger cities in search of work. This has shifted the reliance on traditional nutrient-dense foods on farms to those that are energy-dense, which has resulted in increased rates of childhood obesity in these countries. Childhood obesity is a risk factor for diseases such as cardiovascular disease and cancers. So the first point obviously came from looking at how it can affect high-income countries. Okay, and again, the first part there was obviously that it used to only be a solo issue for high-income countries, and there's rates have continued to increase. All right. The second part obviously has come from the global aspect or the marketing aspect. Okay, so that it's more common advertising continues to target children. Okay, um, then obviously looking at how middle and low income countries have been affected. Okay, so obesity rates are also increasing in low income countries. There you go from there. Okay, um, as well as middle income countries. Okay, a good state. All right, and again, the reason for that is because it's global distribution and marketing. Okay, then again, how it actually has been impacted. Okay, so marketing foods and high in carbohydrates and fat to middle income and low income countries, where there's less understanding of the health effects of these foods and less money for health promotion and prevention services. Okay, there's your next mark there. Okay, and then obviously looking at how those who live in rural communities moving into the city has meant that traditional foods they're usually nutrient dense, and they're looking at foods that are energy dense, which increases rates of childhood obesity, and then how obviously childhood obesity is a risk factor for diseases and so forth. Okay, so there's been time links with all of that. Okay, now again, you're not expected to obviously have a response, so to speak, in that sort of manner. Okay, if you simplified it in a way that had high income, how it affects high income, middle income, how it's affected middle, and then low, and how it's been affected. Okay, also be a key thing there. All right. So again, you're going to make sure that the key thing here that you're obviously focusing on is the promotion in the global aspect. Okay. Now you could, like this response here, tie in middle and low income together. Okay, and look at how fast food companies target um, middle and low income countries that don't have prevention services and health literacy regarding or health promotion. Okay, on the effects of having high ingredients foods, that's fine. And then obviously break it down from there. That's also fine. Okay, that basically will get you 2 marks because you're focusing on 2 different areas at one time. Okay, just to make sure you're aware. Okay, almost done. We're at question 11. Okay, and then we move to 12, and then we've got 13. That's it. Okay, so we've only got a few more areas to look at. All right, so question 11A. All right, so average mark for this was 1.9 out of 6. Okay, a lot of people fell between the 0 and 3 mark. Okay, which is sort of the reason for it. Only 2 people achieved 4 marks. So, again, focusing on tax policy to force prices of sugar sweetened drinks to change behavior. Okay, and then it's obvious link to obesity and diabetes epidemics. So, question here says, using your knowledge of effective health promotion, including the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion, explain why taxing soft drinks is not the only solution to addressing the obesity epidemic. So you're looking at effective health promotion. Okay, you got to include Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion and explain this question here: why taxing soft drinks is the only. So that's where you're looking at. Okay, to get you 6 marks. Okay, so you're going to try and use effective health promotion, Ottawa Charter, and then explain them as to how there's not only the only resolution for the obesity epidemic. Okay, so 3 marks each, I would say, for that. So students who understood the principles of effective health promotion or challenges associated with bringing about dietary change were able to explain why taxing of soft drink is not the only solution to the obesity epidemic. Some students provided a description of the action areas of the Ottawa Charter without linking to obesity. Overall, the question was not answered well. So, example of a higher scoring response. There are several factors that contribute to addressing a health issue such as obesity, often involving broader determinants of health. According to the Ottawa Charter, there are 5 key areas in addressing health, with taxing soft drinks really only dealing with build healthy public policy. Although an increase in price will act as a deterrent for purchase of soft drinks, other factors must be considered. Create supportive environments. The government should work towards making environments such as schools and workplaces more promoting of health and well-being, discouraging presence of vending machines with soft drinks and saturated foods. Additionally, strengthening community action is important to bringing many organisations together to work towards a common goal effectively as as manufacturers lowering sugar content. Is it important to develop personal skills to inform people about the risk factors of obesity, prevent these through exercise skills and cooking skills? Reorienting health services could also prevent obesity before it occurs. Okay, so what this question's actually done is it's looked at the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion. Okay, it's then focused on a variety of areas. Now you could focus on 3, for instance. Okay, and then what it's actually done from this is it's used effective health promotion and then looked at answering the question of how just solely taxing soft drinks doesn't actually result in addressing the obesity epidemic. All right, that's what this question's done. Okay, so that's where the actual response is in the answer. Moving on, question 12, and we'll go to question 12C. Okay, increased world trade and tourism is an example of a global trend. Using examples, analyze the implications of increased world trade and tourism for health. Analyze the implications, world trade and tourism for health and well-being. Okay, key things here. So average mark, 3 marks, okay, was 0.9. So again, a lot of people got 0. Okay, so many students struggled to apply their understanding of the implications of tourism to the initiative provided. Common error was failing to link examples from the initiative to their discussion. A number of students did not attempt this question. So to go through it, increased world trade and tourism can both have positive and negative impacts on health and well-being. In the Hhd initiative, increased tourism led to a rise in the Fiji economy, and as a result, created jobs for people to work in factories and created new demand for farmers. This could lead to an increased sense of purpose, promoting spiritual health and well-being, and providing income through trade for the Fijian government to put towards health promoting services to decrease morbidity and improve health and well-being. Okay, so kind of 3 areas here you got to sort of look at. Okay, firstly, how it can improve health and well-being can be focused obviously on sense of culture. People going to the country to visit could promote a sense of culture and have cultural awareness, therefore promoting spiritual health and well-being. You could look at, okay, in terms of the Fiji economy, creating more jobs for people could mean that they're able to purchase more nutrient-dense food and have a stable income, therefore improving food security and providing the individual with less stress, therefore promoting mental health and well-being. Okay, you could look at a whole variety of things there as well. Okay, in terms of promoting health. Again, it's entirely your choice with how you sort of go down this path. Okay, that's one way that I would do it. Okay, in terms of health promoting services, you could do that as well. It just depends what the examples have been provided for you in the actual case study itself. So that's why, obviously, it depends on what you find. All right. Question D, 12D, sorry. What is meant by sustainability? Okay. Nice and easy here. All right. So easy response, obviously, is that sustainability meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And that basically is your 1 mark there. Okay. Question, part 2 of question D. Explain how the Australian government's investment in Hhd chocolates contributes to sustainability. Explain Australian government's investment. Okay. Hhd chocolates. Right. And then contributes to sustainability. Now, I only done Hhd chocolates only for the purpose of this question here. You don't have to. Okay. You just basically have it as explain Australian government's investment contributes to sustainability. That's basically how I would have it. Okay. Initially, I just done that just for the sole purpose of this question here. So for 3 marks, again, many people fell between the 0 and 1 mark here. Okay, very rarely do people achieve 2 to 3 marks. So basically it says where students understood the dimensions of sustainability, they were able to apply this to the initiative provided. So an example of a high scoring response. By the Australian government investing in Hhd chocolates, this promotes annual income for Fiji and as a result improves economic sustainability. 1 mark here. Additionally, by supporting the company, Australian government indirectly maintains jobs and keeps employment rates high, increasing social sustainability. Furthermore, the money Australian government invests now will promote the growth of added chocolates in the future, providing for future generations also. So as a summary back then to sustainability. Okay. So that's what the 3 marks like. Now, in terms of environmental, you wouldn't have to put environmental in there. Okay. Again, it's entirely how you would obviously look at that. Okay, but that's how in terms of that question there, don't need to worry about environmental sustainability. Okay, you could then link back to sustainability overall. Okay, question 13. Okay, last question. So peace is a prerequisite for health. Explain how peace can lead to improved outcomes. Sorry. All right, that's how I deconstruct that question there. So, average mark was 1.3. A lot of people achieved 2 marks for this question here. Okay, but again, a lot of people between that bracket of 1 and 2. Okay, so an example of response here was that without the threat of war or violence, there is a greater opportunity for food security. Water sources used for drinking and farming can be maintained, which allows crops to be grown and clean water to be available, reducing communicable diseases and improves physical health and well-being. So, second mark and the first mark obviously looks at peace, then what's maintained. All right, nice and simple for this. All right, so that's just deconstructing the answers and actually the questions itself. Okay, again, I'm going to sort of then look into how to approach questions. So I've sort of covered 3 areas here. I'm just going to give a brief, sort of look into how I would approach the exam and how I would look into what I would respond with first. Okay. Now the key thing here, obviously, is you have your reading time, which is quite a good feature, obviously, for it, because you have about, well, this example here was 13 minutes. Okay. Usually you have about 15 minutes. All right. So you've got 15 minutes here. What I would do during this time is I wouldn't worry so much about, I'd focus on the questions and obviously look at what ones to answer first. That would be easiest for you to get out of the way earlier. Okay. And as I mentioned before, I would then focus on trying to make sure that the middle range questions that, are worth maybe 6 marks, 4 marks, are ones that I invest my time in later. So you're going to have a particular strategy towards actually answering the exam. Anything that's in a high response, so as you can tell with question 4, okay, with multiple sources of data available, it's a long question that's worth 8 marks, okay, I would try to ensure that I answer this question last, okay? Reason being is because if you dedicate 20 minutes to it earlier on, 30 minutes, okay, all you're going to be doing throughout that time is just stressing yourself out because you're going to be worrying about the clock, okay? And, how much time's remaining and so forth. So that's why I'd leave it last, okay? If you found yourself in a position where you've got 2 hours and 15 minutes, say, you do the first half of the exam before reaching this question in about an hour and 20 minutes, let's say, okay, and you dedicated 20 minutes to half an hour to respond to this question. I know it seems like a long stretch, but it provides you with that comfortability of being able to answer the question, relax, not so much worrying about it. Even let's say you get to an hour and a half mark and you answer this question for 20 minutes to justify your response, make sure you're using the data correctly, analyzing the sources again. Okay, it leaves you then with 10 minutes at the end to go over all your responses. Okay, now better yet, you could take 5 of that minutes, okay, towards the end and do that again. But what I would do personally is I would go over it, towards the end altogether. Reason being is because if you were to analyze all your answers earlier on, okay, and you'd be like, all right, yeah, I did well on this question here, I did well on this question, and you change some of your responses there. If you did that earlier on, then did question 4, for instance, and then looked at your answer for question 4, it's already still fresh in your mind, okay? And because it's fresh in your mind, you're going to think your response is well already without actually articulating it, without actually, decongesting it all. I'd say that, okay, because it's fresh in your mind still from what you just wrote. So because of that, and looking down on it, you're not going to actually look at. You're going to think your response is fine without actually analytically um, reflecting on your response. Okay. So again, if I was doing the review of my questions, I'd leave that towards the end. Right. Even if you had 20 minutes to go, okay, I'd still leave it towards the end. I'd leave it with the last sort of 10 minutes. I'd give yourself a 10-minute break, 10 minutes to go. I'd review that extended response question just to make sure that you've properly answered it to go in the actual exam. All right. That's how I'd approach it. Again, so the first thing I would do is I'd try to identify earlier on when I'm in my reading time, okay, questions that would be relevant to you, and I'd take my time to read through, majority of the questions, try to answer them. Okay, what I would also be doing is I'd be breaking down, in my mind, okay, and looking at deconstructing the questions, and I'd bring a highlighter into the exam, or if you can't bring a highlighter, bring another pen, okay, different colored pen, and be able to underline it, okay, key areas. I'd do it, okay. It's only going to benefit you. All right. Things that you can probably cluster together in terms of your responses, I'd also do that. Okay. So for questions 5 and 6, what I meant by that is for questions 5 and 6, it focuses on Indigenous Australians. Okay. I'd knock that out the way. Okay. Mainly because they're together. Okay. So whatever is pretty much going to flow in the first response is going to pretty much be reflected in the second question as well. Okay. What sort of areas you're trying to explain and benefit, so forth. Okay. And the key focus areas is mainly what I'm trying to get at. So that's what I would do if I was you. Okay. And that way, at least, it makes you utilizing your time well. Okay. Anything from earlier on, because again, it's only up to chapter 11, this exam here. Okay. Again, utilizing data, I'd smash those questions out straight away as well. Okay. Because they're easier questions to look at, especially if it's identifying a trend, or, for instance, looking at health status for this question here. That's 2 marks. That could be easily done in about a minute. Okay, realistically speaking, okay, if you looked at it properly, and again, key thing here is to make sure that you're reading everything 100% correctly, okay, because in the previous SACs that we've done, okay, a lot of people put Congo instead of Cambodia, okay, making simple mistakes, all right. So again, that's what I'll be doing. Overall though, okay, anything that I can, so again, this focus here, HDI, limitation and advantage, okay, I'd answer that. This question here is only worth 1 mark. I try to make sure I get through it earlier. Anything with a case study, I try to leave towards the end. That way, at least, I'm dedicating time to answering those case studies. And again, if it's worth 4 marks or 6 marks and it's attached to a case study, okay. So, like for instance, question 8 here, okay. How you have B and C, okay, and it's 2 and 4 marks respectively, okay. I'd leave that towards the end as well, okay. I'd answer the simplest questions first, attack them, okay. Whatever I know off the bat, I'd get that out of the way, so because it's going to be fresh in your mind, it's going to be burning, and you're going to be able to attack them straight away, okay. And then I'd go with the middle range questions. So again, anything worth between 3 to 4 marks, I'd start to attack them, okay. And then anything higher than 4 marks, I'd leave towards the end. Okay, that way at least you can go back to answering them later on. Okay, but by all means, if you have any questions, you have any sort of feedback that you want to provide to me, okay, any areas that you would like me to cover, please feel free to obviously message me on Sector or leave a comment, and I'll be happy to obviously assist you as best I can. Okay. Have a great day, guys, and thanks for watching.